Welcome to Trail Manners, the podcast so dedicated to mountain trails and running that they broadcast out of a 78 Volkswagen bus in the mountains. Who does that? Eric and Joel are your hosts and will bring you the trail life as you may have not heard it before. You hear about everything from gear reviews, nutrition to keep you upright and moving forward, and they'll even bring guests into the bus for conversations that you won't hear anywhere else. It's time for some running adventures on a higher elevation. The old 78 Volkswagen bus is fired up and headed to the mountains. Here are your hosts for Trail Manners, proudly representing the 801 with their passion and love for the trails, Eric Manning and Joel Hatch.
Welcome to the Trail Manners podcast. Yet again, another special episode from Outdoor Retailer Show in Salt Lake City, Utah. This episode, we will be talking with Jeff Browning, straight off his Western States Hardrock double. So if this is your first time listening, then thanks for coming. The Trail Manners podcast is produced every week for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at trailmanners.com. Come back often, and please feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Trail Manners. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get after it. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Trail Manners podcast. We are still here at Outdoor Retailer Show, Salt Lake City, Utah. Joel and I have got a gem in hand. We've got the, just in 2016, I mean, there's a lot going on, but 2016, Hurt 100, first place.
Yep.
Skip forward a few months, and then you get into Western States.
Wait, there was another one in there.
What?
There was?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. What was
Pre-state
it?
100K.
That was
in April.
April, right. And then we jump to the Western States, third place in 1630, Hardrock 2 weeks later, fourth place, 2542. We've got Jeff Browning with us right now.
Yeah.
Super psyched. Thanks for taking the time to join us. We know you're busy.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, stoked to be on.
So,
yeah, thanks for having me.
There's so many things we want to talk to you about, and I know you're busy and all the topics, but, I mean, just a brief background of, your running, because you've been doing it a while, but...
Yeah, 16 years.
Yeah, but this year's been a little different, right? I mean, your training's changed.
Yeah.
And obviously your races have been stellar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us our listeners and stuff a little bit about, you a little bit.
Well, I mean, I've been doing it at 16. I got into it from mountain biking, so I have a background in endurance sports before ultra running. Mainly casually mountain biking. I raced a little bit and worked at a bike shop in college in the early 90s, kind of an early adopter of mountain biking. But, got my first mountain bike in like 93, I think, or something. Always been a runner, but just casual, like 20-minute runs with the dog. And I grew up on a 700-acre farm in Missouri, so, ran everywhere. The creek to play, to run to get a tool from my dad in the shop, whatever. And to my grandma's to get ice cream out of the deep freeze. My grandparents always lived a quarter mile away, so I was really good at a half mile.
Yeah.
Quarter mile there, ice cream in
that.
hand, quarter mile back.
That's the ice cream half mile run,
It's
right?
ice cream half mile.
But Grandma's always had the best ice cream.
Totally. They totally do. And but got into ultra running in early 2000s, like 01, ran my first 50K, and mainly was training for Western States 100 in 02. And that's the reason I started running ultras in the first place. I'd heard of Western States, and I wanted to run it, but I realized you had to qualify with a 50-miler and to get in the lottery. And so it was my impatient self didn't like it very much, but I was forced to run a bunch of other races leading up to that 02 Western States. I think 5 or 6 ultras before that, and by the time I hit the finish line, I was totally hooked. And then, slowly got faster. I came to it more from mountain biking, backpacking background, and so I kind of came to it just slow running, just kind of mid to, top 30% type running.
Okay.
I didn't start getting faster and trying to run faster until about 04, 05. Then I started having some success at hundreds and won a few hundreds, Bighorn a couple times, and that got me hooked on really focusing my training. There's something about winning that kind of gets addictive.
Yeah, I would know that.
We just talked about Dom Layfield said the same thing.
Yeah.
Because he said the best thing that ever happened to him was getting on the podium. Because then he's like, I believe I can do this now.
that's really,
right?
it gives you confidence. And, back then, Bighorn, was, we didn't have the deep fields that we have. The times now and the speeds are way crazy. I mean, I've come to it from, like, when it was a small little cult sport.
Right.
And seen it, like, grow and blossom, and just crazy younger guys getting in it, you know, and, 20-year-old winning Western States.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
And so, like, that was unheard of, like, when I got into it, I was young, 28. And, but anyway, I just kind of kept plugging away and learning how to train and reading. And I've always kind of been a tactician and like to dig in and read things. And so I got hold of a lot of Arthur Lydiard's early literature and on training and back in the 2000s. And I realized that I was okay at long distance. I was, I don't have the best leg speed, but I'm pretty good when it gets longer. And I found that hundreds were kind of my distance. And so I really focused on those, after a couple of wins at Bighorn, and, just kept kind of chalking up 100-mile wins and kept trying to get into Western States and freaking couldn't get in. And I just wasn't quite in the golden ticket races. I'm just not quite with all those young guys that are super fast. Like, I just, I'd be like 4th, 5th, 7th, just,
right off
never,
the ticket.
Just not quite there.
Constantly the bridesmaid, right?
So thank goodness that Ultra became a sponsor, and I was already in, Hardrock and in the lottery, and so because I had a couple finishes there already, and so it makes it a little easier. You're in that other bucket,
right,
in the lottery. So, got into Western States. Thank goodness to Ultra, and finally got a shot at Western States. And I just wanted a shot. I kept telling everyone, I was like, I just want a shot, man.
I just want to give it a shot.
I want to see what I can do on that course. Like, I did it as my first 100. You don't know anything in your first 100,
right?
And I just wanted to do it before I got too old, and the clock was ticking, man.
Yeah, right.
And because I tried to start getting back into that when I was like, in my mid 30s, and then it like took a long time, and I finally got back in at 44, and but 14-year hiatus, but it was worth the wait.
Right.
I was making sure I wasn't going to blow it.
Well, from 2002 to this year, you cut 7 hours off your time right in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good, right?
Good.
I mean,
it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not too bad. So we don't want to fast forward too much, but like this year, with the double, that was big. People talking about it. You pick, the double, Western, Hardrock, two of the creme de la creme races, two completely different types of races. How did your training go into that? Was Hurt training for it, or was Hurt like an A race?
Hurt was just wanted to do Hurt. It's been on a bucket list for a long time.
Like a vacation race.
What's that?
It was like a vacation race?
Yeah, totally. And, it's been on my list for a long time. It never worked with my schedule.
Right.
I knew about it from a long time ago. One of the race directors, Jeff Huff, I actually shared time in the Memorial Day training runs in 2002, training for Western States with him. And he knew my buddy Rod Bean, and because Rod's from Hawaii and originally, and so those two knew each other, and we ended up running together with him, and that's how was my introduction to Hurt had just started, and so I always Rod had always told me dude, you're a good technical runner. I'd like to see what you could do on Hurt's course, and so it was always in my head that's on a bucket list. I'm going to do it eventually. So this year worked out, and I felt good after UTMF, and so I decided I would, I kind of recovered well, and I was like, well, I might as well just pick training. I took a little break, and then might as well pick training right back up. And, when you're 44, and now I just turned 45 yesterday.
Oh.
So happy birthday!
Yeah, thanks. I just. Your clock's kind of ticking.
It is.
And so I've been just sandwiching in hundreds, all my bucket list hundreds the last few years. I've been running, I'm running 4 this year. I ran 4 2 years ago. I ran 3 last year. So, I just kind of I'm cramming. And so that's why I ran it.
Okay.
No particular reason, and just other than I wanted to do it. And then, I was going back to visit my family, so I threw in a race in Kansas, the Free State 100K. I used to mountain bike that single track at Clinton Lake State Park near Lawrence, Kansas, where KU is, University of Kansas. And so I have there's a little nostalgia there. So I wanted to, go run those trails. It's a sweet 20-mile single track loop, and the race does 3 laps for 100K. I felt like I could go grab the course record there too, and which it worked out. And, me and another guy, a guy from Nebraska who's super fast, he pushed me, and we pushed each other, and we both went under the course record. I just happened to edge him out and by about 10 or 11 minutes. And so that was kind of my training, 100K, recovering from that, Memorial Day training runs. Had a little calf issue going into, after the Memorial Day training runs, I did a really stupid thing, which I would never coach my clients to do. Do a 3-day block of 70 miles and then take a day off and then go to tempo work. And I cramped a little in my calf, and by the time I got home, I was limping on it, and I thought it was just tight muscle. Got a bunch of body work over about a week, and it wasn't getting any better, and it ended up taking about 3 weeks to heal, so which means it was a tear, some kind of micro tear. But I was able to get on my bike. Coming from a biking background, that's the first thing I go to, and got on my road bike every day, and then was able to run 20 minutes on, so I'd go ride an hour and a half on bike, and then 20 minutes. So I didn't get to do my last big training block right before, Western States, which, my quads, my downhill legs weren't quite as sharp as they normally would be, and my cruising speed, because I didn't get to do my last tempo workouts, was a little stale. So I was pretty conservative, especially in the first 25, 30 miles. I was worried about the calf. Mm-hmm. I did a tester run a week out, and it was okay. I didn't feel it, so it was mentally, that was when I was kind of, okay, the race is on. I'll be fine, I think. And
we'll see.
I was freaking out, though. You asked my wife. There was a cloud in the Browning household.
Oh, no.
Following me around like Eeyore.
Because you got your shot, and now you're not.
Yeah, I got my shot, and they, Matt Trappy was planning on following me for both races with video, and so there was that added pressure, and I was like, man, I'm gonna blow it. I just blew it by doing stupid training, but it ended up being okay, and I just went a little conservative on the first 20, 25 miles, and then it felt okay, so then I quit thinking about it and raced.
Well, there's so much. We could jump around so much because kind of what you're saying right now, because you had Hardrock 2 weeks after, so heading into Western.
Yeah, 19 days. I got an extra week this year. Normally it's 12.
Oh, okay. All right.
So this year was 19.
Okay, well, 19 days between those two. Cheater, right? So did you go into it with a different mindset than you would have went into another 100-miler knowing that you had Hardrock 19 days later? Because they're two dramatically different races, right?
No, I went into Western States racing it.
Okay.
I wanted top 10.
Okay.
I finally got a shot.
Yeah.
I didn't want to blow it.
Right.
So I really wanted the top 10. That was my goal. Top 10, but really wanted top 5, and I was, secretly wanted a podium. So that was definitely a focus, and my plan was to race Western States and then show up at Hardrock and finish.
Gotcha.
I just wanted another finish there. But then everyone started talking about the double and started talking about there's a record,
right,
which I didn't even know about. And I was like, well, at that point I was like, well, I'm going to do both, and I'll see what I do at Western States. It all depends on your first time, if you're even close.
True. And
so I got done, and I was 40 minutes arrears to Nick, but I felt like I could run Hardrock well, if I recovered well enough. So, I knew I had a potential to get that time, get the record, but you never know. It all depends on recovery.
Yeah.
So.
Well, because you went into Western and third place, 16:30. So not only top 10, top 5, but you did podium. So that race itself, did it go according to plan? Did it work out better than you thought?
Well, I didn't run as fast as I wanted to run.
Okay.
I had a goal of a little faster than that, for splits that I had. But with this, I knew I probably couldn't hit those splits, and I even told my crew, I'm not sure if I can hit these splits because of my last month of training.
Okay.
I didn't get that last little peak, like that sharpening you get. So I knew I might be a little flat. But I knew I could still, just based on experience, it was Western was 2400. So I knew just based on how many ultras I'd run and how many hundreds I run in the past in the 16 years that there's a muscle memory there that you don't necessarily need all that sharpening for 100, but it's nice to have, especially from a confidence standpoint of knowing I can hammer this downhill early and not blow up. So, it just made me a little more conservative early, which I think that's where I lost the splits.
Okay.
Was in the first 40 miles that I had on written down. I'm not going to tell you what those are, but
I can tell that you're kind of. I was looking to ask because I'm like.
But I'll be going for those
say.
next year. For
okay.
sure.
Well, there we go. There we go.
So hopefully I'm going faster than 16:30 next year.
Well, just watch your training block the month out, right?
Yeah, right.
So Western States happens, okay? The recovery, okay, because you have 19 days plus travel, okay,
Yep.
which is different. Now you got a different course. What was your recovery like?
Well, I immediately, I concentrate on nutrition and moving again. So, finished Western States Saturday, took Sunday to drive back home, which I drove. I drove home.
And Northwest,
my wife
right?
did. Yeah, I live in Bend, so about 8 hour drive or whatever, 8.5. But my wife drove for about an hour in the middle. Just gave me a little break. I could put my feet up, and then I drove the rest of the way. But Monday I was moving, 45-minute walk at lunch. Did that for a week. And the Sunday, a week later, took 7 days off of just walking. One strength training session to restore range of motion. I teach a strength training class at a local gym, so I always do. I don't miss that. If I'm in town, it's Wednesday mornings at 7 a.m. I don't miss it. And so I just, strength training is super important, especially if you're plus 35, 40. You should have strength training in your training regimen. People, listen. It really helps with recovery and for injury prevention. So never miss that. And then, started running, jogging like 20 minutes on Sunday and with my wife, super slow with some hike breaks. And then jogged like 4 days in a row, took a day off, flew to Durango, and drove up to Cunningham Gulch and camped at 10-4 and got on the course Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
Okay, so you're at a week early then about.
Yeah, I went a week early. I was already acclimated, partially acclimated. I use an altitude mask at home, so I'm already acclimated during the season. So I just needed, for Hardrock's so tall, so big and so high that you need a little, that extra week of, getting something. I'm already slightly or well acclimated. It's just to come in and, put the icing on the cake. So, coming in and just going up high every day and sleeping at 10-4. So, going up to 13 or 14. I did my tester run. I always do a tester run a week out from the race, 5 or 6, 7 days out, and go run a 10-miler. And if you feel okay, and don't feel just dead flat, it's a good sign. And I felt good. I went up Handy's, the 14er in the race and from Grouse, and did an out and back. But I, hiked and jogged downhill slow with some hike breaks. It took 4 hours or something, but just on my feet. And I felt good. Anytime I was, my legs felt good. When I'd ran a couple little pickups on the downhill, and my quads didn't feel flat. And I was okay, I like the little testers, little 15, 20-second testers. It feels okay. So that was encouraging mentally, And then kept getting on the course every day, and everything was coming around. And then I moved down to Silverton on Wednesday, the last 2 days before the race, which you're moving from 10-4 down to 9,300, so 1,100 feet. And all of a sudden it's body's ooh, oxygen.
I feel good.
Yeah. So sleeping in a bed, but I got really good sleep. I came without my family went to Western States, but because those two were so close together and you got to go for a week, my wife was just let the kids pick which one they wanted to go to, and they chose Western States because they'd already been to Hardrock, and so they hadn't been to Western States. So, I ended up, being by myself and camping and hanging out and just sleeping 10 hours a night, which helps with acclimation as well, and the final rest before the race.
Well, being a coach, because now, I haven't run either race. One of them's on my bucket list. One kind of is. I haven't run either race, but as a coach, would you train differently for those races?
Totally.
So how did your training mentality go in, knowing that they're two different races? Did you train just for Western and see what happens at Hardrock, or kind of mix in a little bit?
Well, my plan was to, if I would have got that last month of training in, my plan was to really train hard, steep power hiking, which correlates to the canyons in Western States. But so I was well trained for Hardrock hiking. I'd done a lot of hike training, a lot of hard power hiking, steep stuff. And then for Western States, you really need a lot of tempo work because there's just so much runnable, at a solid pace with that big of a field. So normally I would do a lot more tempo work for something like Western States. There's a lot of downhill, so you got to train those two are similar in that you have to train a lot of downhill, for Hardrock and Western States. But I mainly just did heat training. Was planning on doing last downhill sessions and tempo, and then just let the chips fall where they may at Hardrock. But ultra mountain training's not that different. Hardrock, you would just do more steep stuff, like hard technical stuff. Especially steep downhills too, because there's a lot of like really gnarly technical footing, especially up on top of the passes when you're coming off, where you're just like super steep downhills. Whereas, all the downhills at Western States are pretty runnable.
Now with West, now we'll jump back into Hardrock because you were rested for 19 days and you had your podium finish at Western. Was there a point at Hardrock where you were like, because earlier you said you were just wanting to finish, do the race. Is there a point that you wanted to say, okay, I'm going to go for it? Was that before the race?
It was
a certain point during
definitely
the race?
Before the race, because we'd been talking about the double record, and so I was going after it, and so I already knew like I needed to run, like 27:02 or faster at Hardrock. And I had run 26:58 in 2014 with a 70-minute break with a lightning storm in American Basin. So I knew that, I could run, sub 26 on that course on a right day, with weather cooperating and all that kind of stuff, and your body cooperating.
The other big key.
The other big key. But I definitely was ready to throw down. I knew after the testers in when I got into Cunningham and camped, and on those testing runs the week before the race, all systems seemed to check out. So I was definitely focused on getting the record.
Confidence was there. The mental side of it.
Mental side was there. I don't like to waste opportunities. I mean, I take time away from my family, my wife and 3 kids, and I kind of feel like it's one of the reasons that I've only have one DNF and over 100 ultras.
Wow.
That's because I rolled an ankle at UTMB, so there's unfinished business there too. But it's one of those that if I'm going to take that time away from them, I'm not going to drop out unless it's an injury or life-threatening. And I've even stayed in it when it was life-threatening in the lightning storm in 2014 to Hardrock. Yeah. It was scary, man. But I was definitely like, I don't want to die. I have kids.
Well, me and Joel talked about that. We were talking about something else. And as you get old, I mean, you'll take certain risks when you're not a family man or younger. But when you get older, these other things flash.
Yeah,
it's
man.
like,
it's not really worth it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah, right.
We were talking to Peter Downing this morning about that.
Yep.
And we were like, no, I don't take those risks anymore.
Yeah, that you might have taken 20 years ago, 15 years ago.
20, exactly. 20. Yeah, because we ran into my friend from Jackson 20 years ago, and we're like, yeah, we're taking those risks back then, but not now.
Not now.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. So I didn't want to leave my wife a widow. So
for something,
because she'd probably kill you if you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. She would have digged me up.
Yeah.
Do it again.
And smacked you with the shovel.
Yep, exactly.
Now with Hardrock, because it is always a stacked field every year, right? Did you have your game plan going out? You've run it how many times besides
Hardrock,
this year?
that was my third finish this year.
Finish.
So I've been there 2 times.
Comfortable with the course? Have you gone both directions?
Yeah, I've been in both directions.
Okay.
So, and I just recently, the direction this year was, I did the same in 2014.
Okay.
So super familiar. I just went and scouted some of the key spots, like Virginia's Pass with the snowfield, see what the conditions were like in the snowfield. Mm-hmm. Had re-scouted the stuff going up Little Giant at the end and out of Cunningham, because I was camping in Cunningham, and up into Maggie, towards Maggie, that whole section, just because those are really good to have in your head at the end. Just knowing what's coming in front of you. Little Giant is so hard at the end of the race. You're at 91 or 92 miles, and you have to climb almost 3,000 feet in 2 miles.
Wow.
Up to 13.1 or whatever it is up for the top. And so it's brutal, and it seems really, when you're fresh, it doesn't seem that hard.
Yeah, right.
But when you get in the race, it's just like you've already got a little, you've been pushing at altitude, and you got a little pulmonary edema maybe, and there's always, everyone has the Hardrock hack after the race, a little bit for a day or so, and just pushing your lungs at that altitude, it's tough, and so you just it's kind of a slog the last part, that last climb.
Right when you smell the barn, you slog at 3.000 feet in some
Yeah,
altitude.
it feels like it takes forever because there's all these like little false sections where you come around the corner and like, oh man, we're not even close. Come around the corner, oh no, this has got to be it. No, that's not it.
That's not it. So you did it in, 25:42.
Yep.
So under 26, just like
Yep.
you mentioned. So things fell together for you through the race.
Yeah, totally.
Did you have it's Hardrock, it's a 100-miler, but did you have those sections, not of necessarily doubt, but those funks, those bonks, those low sections, or did it, for the
I
most
didn't
part,
really
it
have
was
any
smooth?
like energy low sections in that race. I mean, since I've made this kind of adaptation to optimize fat metabolism thing, it's I haven't had any bonks this year at all in 300s. So, but you still do like I had a foot issue at the end of Western States. I had a maceration in my right ball of foot. So it's like a little fold. Your feet get kind of pruny and they fold over on itself, and it's like super painful. It feels like a blister pops on the bottom ball of your foot. Like when I finished, I was convinced I had a giant pop blister. It was so hurt so bad, but I took it off and it's like there wasn't anything there. And then you look really close. Oh, there's a little fold. It's like, dang, that thing's sore.
Painful.
But like the skin dies and then it sloughs off. So like it's peels and like looks like you got a sunburn, and peels all off. So I had fresh skin there, and so going into Hardrock, that was my biggest concern because my legs felt okay the week out, but I was really concerned about the foot. Like hammering 34,000 feet of downhill.
Wet feet.
And you're going to be wet again.
Yeah.
So I had done some research when I got home from Western States and on how to take care of it. Did a lot of Epsom salt bath soaks on my foot, and then really worked on using an emery board and trying to get some of the skin off. And then I bought did a ton of research on like adventure racers. And backpackers and prevention and like what to put on it. And it's like I found a lube that I tried out new and had tested in training. And so I was going to use that. And so I used that kind of before the race, and then I had my crew had it, and I felt it at 18. Like coming down the second downhill, I was like, oh man, this sucks. Like I can't have this happening.
18 miles in.
Yeah, of Hardrock. You're just like that gets in your head. And so I knew like it was fine on the uphills. It was just hurt on the downhills. And so I was like, okay, I got down into Telluride to see crew for the first time, and I immediately was like, I need the lube. I got to take care of it. So I sat down, peeled the sock back, lubed it, put the sock back on, shoe back on, and like went. And then I just did it, at Uray, did it at Grouse and changed socks at Grouse. And I just had to stay on it and be proactive. And it got better. Like, it hurt more at mile 18 than it did at mile 50.
Oh. Gotcha.
So, and it progressively got better. And I did some acrobatics to get across some creeks to keep my feet dry. Normally I would have just like not worried about it and just gone through. But there are some places up in Pole Creek, up by the Continental Divide Trail, that you can't avoid. There's a big couple pond, kind of slow-moving sections of like stagnant water that are like almost, probably crotch deep, waist deep, and like I couldn't avoid those.
Can't pull.
I mean, I tried in the middle of the night.
Parkour.
Yeah, I totally. I was like, I went up like 40 yards one way, 40 yards the other. It's like there's no place to cross. So I was like, okay, I got to go through.
Got to get wet.
But it was fine. It ended up being fine.
That's good.
Yeah.
Because, you brought it up right now because it's a big topic. So, we've been covering, your racing, what, you've been doing, which is just phenomenal. Everybody, I don't care who you are, you're looking at, that's impressive. Not just 19 days apart, two of the biggest races, but the time you did it in, the double, so to say, and the record from Nick Clark, I think, is the one that had it before.
Yep.
Before you. But you mentioned it a minute ago, and I know that's the big hot topic, right? It's getting big. Me and Joel talk about it. We've talked to, Vespa.
Yeah, some people don't think it's a fad.
So I know it's a big topic, and I mean a big topic. It's not something you're going to learn about in an hour or 2 hours. You got to do your due diligence, but you went fat adaptive.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So like I kind of was forced. In 2015, I had some like pretty bad GI issues, like with I came back from a couple trips to South America, and I came back with some weird GI stuff. And it ended up being like a pretty bad candida, like yeast overgrowth in my GI tract.
Okay.
Just itchy inside, like couldn't get to it, like your belly itches, and
Nothing
it
you do
was
about it.
not cool. It was not cool. It was
So
like
you're just
something was
rubbing
in
your belly all the time.
Yeah, but I
Just-
couldn't itch it. You know what I mean? Like, it just sucked.
Just thinking about eating a cactus or something.
Yeah, it's just like, it was horrible. And I had like 4 or 5 flare-ups in 2015. So, especially after when my immune system would be down after 100 or something. And it would be horrible. I would miss a night of sleep, couldn't sleep, itching so bad. I'd have some rash flare-ups too on the, externally. And so finally the 4th or 5th flare-up, I can't remember. It was after UTMF, and it was like November of 2015, end of November, and I was just desperate. I spent a week after a flare-up, and it was like, inside, outside, like, flare-up, and I spent about 20, 30 hours in 1 week, basically every night from like 7 o'clock till midnight, online, reading forums, researching what can I do about candida, yeast, how to get rid of it naturally. I wasn't willing to take a bunch of hardcore medications. My wife and I are pretty organic, and we go out of our way to eat local and buy from local farms when I buy meat and stuff like that. So I really was, desperate, and so I came across a forum that talked about just paleo primal blueprint type diet,
Right.
Like cutting out grains, sugar, and legumes, basically.
Yep.
And you can't, yeast feeds on sugar, and you got to quit feeding it sugar. Well, I was really freaking out about that because I take gels during races, and a lot of gels.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what am I going to do for racing? I can't handle another flare up. But, when I found this forum, my wife already has a little bit of like some sensitivity to carbohydrates, kind of like hypoglycemia type symptoms, and we'd already found that through natural eating. We ate a whole foods diet, organic whole foods diet, and we found that kind of like through, we made a shift back in like 2004, and she had wanted to kind of go paleo for a while and cut out grains, and I was always like, I need my rice and potatoes, or whatever. And so I wasn't willing to. And she had already had like 3 cookbooks. So when I said, I think we should try paleo primal thing, she was like, okay. She's like, I've had these cookbooks for 3 years. And so we just broke out a cookbook and started making new menu every night, and until we found like new comfort foods. And I just started like listening to podcasts and reading online, and I came across VespaPower.com's all their OFM stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when I was fully focused after that. Like I was like, ooh, it could help with like endurance performance. And the faster study had just come out that Dr. Volek did at University of Connecticut. And so, that showed like the science. If you do it in your everyday diet, you can be more adapted, and to burn onboard fat, and it just it meant you just ate paleo primal, and so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do that because it's going to help with candida, and it cleared up within a week.
Wow.
And
Jeez.
and since then I've only had 1 flare up, and it was a minor one. After hurt, I drank a whole bottle of wine. And
Okay. There's some sugar in
There's
that.
some sugar in there. I've been really strict. I had 7 weeks, like December 1st of hurt. I had 7 weeks to adapt, to get my body to adapt as best as possible. So I went really strict. I mean, I cut out coffee. I cut out everything.
Whoa.
I drink coffee now.
I'll say, hold on.
No.
Hold up, cowboy.
I drink fat coffee now. But at the time, I did everything possible, like every little trick that I could do. And I was just inhaling, podcasts and literature. I read Volek and Finney's, Art and Science of Low Carb Living, and like all the science behind it. Really got in the weeds, and read The Big Fat Surprise and Primal Blueprint and all these different books. And like that's when I was like, okay, I know the science shows that I can totally eat saturated fat and not be bad if my carb load's not super high. And so, it's not going to clog my arteries or something. And so that's when I was kind of really focused from that point forward. And then, there's a lot of misunderstanding with how to do this diet and endurance training. You don't eat fat during a race. It's just a high fat, low carb, moderate protein in your everyday diet. And then your strategic, after you do that initial adaptation phase of like, say, it really takes about 8 to 12 weeks to really, really fully get adapted by kind of restricting carbs. Then you slowly, you start strategically using carbs. So like mainly fruit and starches like sweet potatoes. And you're strategically using those around hard workouts, quality workouts, big volume, that kind of stuff. And just what we call a carb sneak. And then during the endurance event or a long run, you use anything that works. So I use Roctane, goo Roctane, and mainly, and then some strategic goo gels, like Roctane gels.
So how'd your stomach respond to that after restricting it for 6 to 8 weeks?
Well, I really restricted for 4 weeks, and then I started strategically adding back in fruit and tubers here and there
during the race, though. How's your GI?
It's fine. I have
okay?
But the cool thing is like I used to take 350, 400 calories an hour, counting gels, table food, drinks, everything. And now I do 200 or less.
And that's just coming out mostly goos, right?
Yeah, mainly Roctane powder drink, in a bottle. Right. So like for me, it's and I eat a little bit of salted plantain chips and unsweetened banana chips about once an hour. A little bit of solids, not much, but that's about all I go on now in hundreds. So it's half the calories I used to, and I have 2200s under my belt that I did it the old way, right? And now I do it this way the last 3, and feel great. No GI stress,
right?
But you have to have the discipline to do this in your everyday life,
right?
And,
I think that's
to really get adapted.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get partially adapted by just doing some fasted runs, and you can get a little more efficient. But the science, the faster study really showed that the guys who are doing it in their everyday life are burning a lot more calories from onboard fat.
Well, it's a
per hour.
lifestyle.
It's all about lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle because you talk about it all the time. Different shows we've had different nutritionists on or different things, and it's not about a fad diet or be good for 8 weeks or be good for 10 weeks. It's a lifestyle. You can't
it's a lifestyle
change. You
change.
can't just change your body and then go, oh, cool, I'm here, and then change back. Because I remember reading your race report for Hurt, and you talked about the training leading up to Hurt, some of the runs you went on trying to get away from all this stuff. And you're bonking and feeling sluggish, and you knew you had to fight through some of that. Is that right? I mean, really?
Yeah, I really had some rough long runs because I was doing this adaptation phase. Normally, you would do it in the off season, and when you're just easy base mileage, with no real long runs. And I did try to do it training for Hurt.
Yeah, the whole training plan.
I definitely had some crappy workouts the first 3 weeks, and then they started coming around, and then I started talking to Zach Bitter and Peter Defty at Vespa, and they started giving me some consulting time and helping me kind of tweak it a little bit and started using the strategic carbohydrates. And that's when I started really seeing a difference. The pop came back, in speed workouts and that kind of stuff, and tempo workouts, and in long runs. I just was taking less. I just found that I could go on a lot less calories than I had previously because your body's adapted to burning onboard fat.
And that's when I read your Hurt report, when you talked about running in the race, taking your gels, you were like, man, I thought I should have been taking more because I was used to it, but I didn't need it, and I didn't feel like I needed it.
I know I was very confident after Hurt, but going into Hurt, it was my first race on it, and I had all these backup plans with extra calories and drop bags and crew, and telling them I'm not sure, I mean, Jesse Haynes ended up crewing for my normal crew person got food poisoning the night before the race, so he couldn't do it, and then Jesse's wife, Kira, who now was fiance, now she ended up dropping, and so by the halfway through the race, by about mile 30, well, maybe mile 30 or 40, he was like, I'm crewing for you, dude. And I was like, oh, sweet,
Bonus.
So he ended up, we were sharing a condo all together, and I told him before the race, I don't know, man, I don't know if this is going to work, and I'm going to try to go on less calories, but I may need these extra ones. And I think I was really surprised when I was in the lead at 47. I left an aid station, and I was like, dude, it's working. It's working. I was more surprised than anyone.
The mad science of it all.
But it was really cool. I felt really good in that race.
Now, going forward from then and now today, I mean, I saw you down at the UltraSpire booth kind of talking about it's a lifestyle, so your eating that's your life now, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's just normal, because we were talking when you're on the road, it's harder to
It's
maybe
a little
find food or eat.
It's not that hard. I mean, I just
Not
you
as
know if I get a burger, I just ask for a burger with a lettuce wrap instead of bread.
Right.
You know, and I don't sweat it. You know, I mean, if I'm cheating a little, like I had sushi last night and I ate some rice. You know, it's not that big a deal. You know, one meal's not going to hurt you. It might knock you out of burning fat a little bit, but you know, you kind of want to. The whole point of this is not to be like, you know, it's not a ketogenic diet. You don't want to be in ketosis all the time, you know, because that's one of our metabolic pathways to like deal in times of like when it isn't when carbohydrates weren't ripe.
Right.
You know, when we don't have fruit, we didn't have, you know, it wasn't the harvest time. So we went, you know, we maybe had a Paleolithic man or prior to conveniences of the grocery store, we went, you know, long periods without high carbohydrate load, and so we ate high fat, protein, and a little bit of carbs here and there. And then, you know, when things were ripe, we'd like gorge on carbohydrates. So we have metabolic flexibility. We just live in a convenient technology age where we can get anything out of season at any time of the year. You can go to the grocery store and go get mangoes at any time of the year.
Yeah.
Those are not in season here.
Yeah.
So like, you know, having that constant high carb load that our bodies really aren't built to have it all the time. We're built to have it in seasons. So that's all I'm doing is mirroring that metabolically. I'm just doing it instead of on a quarterly basis, I'm doing it on a weekly basis. I'm just doing it around workouts. So like, you know, sometimes I have a higher carb load. I'm just doing it from natural sources that I would get as a hunter-gatherer.
Right.
You know, I'm trying to mirror that, you know, genetic code,
Okay.
you know, the way we're wired.
And at home, because again, you were talking about what's like a typical day of food for you? Because I heard you talking about downstairs, like salads with meats and eggs and high-fat meats like a lamb, right?
Yeah. So like, you know, a typical day would be get up, I make a coffee with MCT oil and heavy whipping cream, and then mid-morning I have a couple eggs cooked in coconut oil or butter or something. You know, something with a little bit of some extra fat on it. Or hard-boiled eggs with some olive oil, you know, drizzled on top. And then work out at lunch, and then heavy salad, so a lot of vegetables cut up on the salad, olive oil and sea salt on it or something, with a little bit of leftover meat from the night before, or like, you know, wild-caught sardines or something like that. And then, you know, usually maybe a like late afternoon snack of fruit, you know, maybe with a little nut butter or something like that, or a handful of seeds or something, you know, celery and nut butter or something like that. You know, not a ton of nut butter. I definitely don't do a ton of nuts and nut butter.
You can crush several thousand calories and nuts, right?
Yeah, and well,
Really
and
easy.
it has phytic acid. It has a little
Yeah.
bit of phytic acid in it. So like you definitely like want to limit, you know, nuts and seeds.
And
It can be a little hard to digest.
So yeah, that acid causes a little bit of inflammation in
Well,
you. Do you find it in you?
Well,
It does?
phytic acid just blocks, you know, vitamin mineral absorption in the gut.
Right.
So, you know, all grains have phytic acid and gluten. Most grains have gluten in them, and both of those are kind of like cause a little bit of an inflammation response in the GI tract. So, you know, I just try to like have nuts and seeds in moderation.
Right.
And then, you know, in a bind, I might take a spoonful of coconut oil.
Oh, yeah.
You know, or something. As if I'm running out the door to take a kid to karate or something, you know, and I don't have time for a snack. I just like a spoonful of coconut oil and go. I'm fine. And then evenings we usually do some kind of my wife cooks a big dinner, and usually that's some kind of paleo, you know, type recipe. You know, when we first made the shift, we made a new recipe all the time so we could find new recipes to replace our old ones. And so we found a ton, you know, from this cookbook we had. And we, you know, some we'd be like, we're not making that again.
Yeah.
And then other ones we were like, oh, God, so good.
That's a go-to.
Yeah, and so that's a go-to. That's like a staple every week.
Yeah.
And so, you know, usually it's vegetables or a couple of vegetables, either sautéed in some kind of fat, you know, whether it's coconut oil or something like that, grass-fed lard or something like that, butter. And then sometimes sweet potatoes, you know, usually cooked in, same thing, cooked. Most carbohydrates are like in a bed of fat.
Right.
Okay.
And it's not like you don't have to dump a ton on there, but like fat is so like calorie dense. You just need a couple, spoonfuls, and for a family of 5, and it really makes it taste good for one thing, and it's easy, and then usually some kind of good meat, good grass-fed, steak or hamburger, or we try to do a variety of meats. So like I don't just go like chicken and steak. We usually get beef from a local guy, a quarter for our deep freeze, and then I just bought a whole sheep recently from a local guy, and I have a family of 5 and I have a 14-year-old son.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So your kids are all on it, right? So your whole family's doing this, or?
Yeah, everyone's doing it. We just don't restrict. I don't restrict anything with the kids, like as far as like, they eat tons of fruit and eat tons of sweet potatoes, and sometimes they'll mow through a whole bunch of almond butter. Kind of pricey.
Where did
but
that go?
It's all right. And they're growing, especially a 14-year-old right now. And then sometimes I'll make like an herbal tea in the evenings with a little bit of coconut oil and coconut milk, so I've got a little fat in it, and before bedtime, and that's kind of a typical day. I usually have 2 cups of coffee a day, so one in the morning, the fat coffee I was talking about, and then I mix it like with a half and half, so I do decaf, half decaf, half
Regular.
caffeinated.
Yeah.
That way I can have my extra cup in the afternoon and only have a cup of caffeine a day.
Caffeine.
I used to be kind of a caffeine abuser before. when I was eating a lot of carbohydrates, I just crashed. I was crashing so much from all the hard training. I would get like these like weird energy lows during the day, and so I would go to caffeine because I work as a graphic designer and coach, online endurance coach. So like being like alert in the afternoons is pretty important, and sometimes after my workouts I'd be just dead.
Right.
So I would just drink a bunch of extra caffeine.
Now,
But I don't have to do that anymore.
Now, do you help like with your athletes that you coach? Do some of them ask questions about this stuff?
Yeah,
as
some
well?
people are coming to me because of that, just to get help with that. They may want to make a shift. So I am doing that, and I do some a little bit of consulting in the nutritional thing. I'm working on a couple of certifications right now. So, mainly just trying to help people kind of dial in race day nutrition, their everyday nutrition, especially if you're an endurance athlete. Like, you needed some good fats in your diet, and a lot of people are pretty low in good fats.
Well, that's been like the norm for so long, is a lot of people like stay away from fats.
Yeah, well, we've been taught for like 50, 60 years to like, avoid fat because it's going to clog your arteries and make your cholesterol go off the charts. But the science doesn't necessarily back that up. And I recommend anyone who I recommend reading The Big Fat Surprise. A woman spent 9 years researching and writing the book. She had no one funding it because she'd already written a bestseller, and the publisher said, "What do you want to do for your second book?" And she said, "Well, I have this hobby."
9-year plan.
And so she wrote this book, and she goes back to over 1,000 scientific papers. She goes back to every cited paper and all the nutritional studies that all our policies have been based on. And she went back to those original papers that they're cited, and it's a pretty interesting read. It'll open your eyes a little bit to not only to how scientific research is funded in the U.S., but also just how saturated fat and cholesterol were demonized and are not necessarily, they're not the culprit. It's probably sugar.
Yeah. Well, and we talked with Peter Defty from Vespa in the spring, I think, because he was kind of one of the, I want to say, early guys in the nutrition field that's like, no, fat's not bad for you, and they kind of demonized him a little bit.
Yeah.
He talks about that, and now where he's like, well, now it's coming back around, so now they don't think I'm so crazy. I mean, you're a huge example just of what you're doing with Fat Adaptive, but it's definitely caught a lot more steam within the last, I don't know, for me anyway, seeing it 6 to 12, 18 months. But
even Dom Layfield, when we talked to him, he was saying, well, I go out and do most of my runs just in the fasted states.
Yeah.
And
Which helps.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And then,
Even if you don't do the shift I did, and going a little stricter with diet, like, you can still get some adaptation.
yeah. And with Tim Noakes, he was kind of like the godfather of nutrition for endurance athletes. And then he made that change. And everybody's
and
calling him a heretic right now.
Oh, they totally are.
Yeah, trying to run him out of the country.
There's a giant system
Yeah.
that you don't want to go against, or you could get your career can get pretty muddied.
Right.
And you don't get research money and all kinds of stuff.
I
But-
think that Mark from Mark's Daily Apple, Mark Sisson, he did a really good podcast on endurance athletes. And wasn't really talking about ultra runners, but just like marathoners and triathletes. And he was basically saying the same thing you're saying. So if you're really interested and you don't necessarily want to read, so Mark Sisson did a really good podcast with Joe Rogan. And they talked for several hours on this subject. And it's a really good listen.
Yeah, Mark. I mean, he's the author of Primal Blueprint,
Right.
which I really like. I like his lifestyle approach to this type of lifestyle of what I'm doing, and he's the first blog I found.
Right.
MarksDailyApple.com. Like when I was having these issues with Candida, and I was just like, that's where I went to his blog, and he had so much good information, and it made sense from like the way we're genetically coded and like hunter-gatherer background, and we haven't been farming that long, 7,000 to 9,000 years. It's a blip in our genetic code, and so just understanding like kind of mirroring that primal existence in a technology age, it's pretty. It spoke to me personally.
Well, it had to, right? You had to do something.
I had to do something because what I was doing, the status quo was not working.
No, it was getting worse.
Yeah.
So that's awesome that you were able to do that, though, and to see the results.
Yeah, I have to say it's been one of those aha moments in life.
Not only your general health, which, that's what you want to take care of first and foremost, but then you've got this other really big benefit of I can go out, I can run 100 miles on less calories and have, if not same results, better results at a gently aging athlete.
Well, I lost 8 pounds.
Yeah. What was funny is we saw you earlier in the hall.
Oh, yeah.
And Eric goes, "Did you see Browning? You see how skinny he is?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he is skinny. He's our age. What's up with that?"
Yeah, right.
Well, I didn't realize how much systemic kind of inflammation I had going on until, what's interesting too is that I was having more and more trouble with hundreds getting down to like my race weight of like I'd always raced at.
So what's that at?
Well, now I weigh about like dead on 138, like always.
6th grade.
And so what was your race weight before?
About 145.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But interestingly, I'm at the same weight as I was when I was 18 or 19 before I went to college and drank beer.
Right.
So
yeah.
So
Wait a minute.
Before I got the freshman 15, or 25 or whatever. And so like that's what's interesting to me is like my body just naturally reset itself at my 19-year-old weight and then stabilized. It did it in first 2.5 weeks on the diet.
Really?
Like I lost a bunch of weight.
First 2.5 weeks, you said?
Yep, all happened in 2.5 weeks.
Holy cow.
It just zapped off, and then you have to remember I was training for Hurt too, so I was doing really decent volume at the time.
Yeah.
But so it came off a little faster than normal.
Right.
But it zapped off, and then it quit.
Okay.
And I was worried about it. I didn't want to like get too light.
Right.
And so I was like really like concentrating. I went and bought a brand new scale.
Yeah.
I put it in there, and so I was charting morning and evening what my weight was.
Make sure you didn't drop
I made
too
sure
low.
I didn't drop too low.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is it just stabilized, and it's still the same no matter what. Like I might lose a pound after 100, but then I put it back on within 2 weeks.
Right.
Wow.
And so it's just been very, very consistent.
Right.
And
that's just overall health, though. That's
Yeah.
got to be just crazy good for all your systems,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Because you're just at this stable
Yeah.
part of everything. It's not
Yeah.
this fluctuation of I just lost 10 pounds.
yeah, I have no fluctuation anymore, and
Yeah.
it's been cool. Just it did shock some family members because it happened in really quickly, and
Right.
I at the time I had to I went back down to my high school waist size too.
That's crazy.
And so I had to buy new jeans.
Yeah.
So I went and bought some skinny jeans.
I was going to say.
Like I was kicking some hipster skinny jeans. With the help of my wife, she helped me pick some out, and she was like, "You look good in these." And so, like, I went to Christmas, and my family were like, "Whoa!"
Like, guys, he's sick. What's
yeah,
going
well,
on?
got
they
Giardia?
said you're a little too skinny.
Yeah.
And just because they were used to seeing me for the last 20 some years, You know,
145.
yeah, 145 to 150.
Yeah.
You know, in the winter I was 150, 152.
Because ice cream is really good in the
Oh
winter.
yeah, absolutely, and a lot of beer.
Now,
gotta
with
insulate.
it being
I live in Bend, there's a
national,
lot of good beer.
With it being National IPA Day, have you cut beer?
I have it on. I don't keep it in the house. I
Smart
drink.
man.
I drink red wine.
Okay.
But I do drink red wine pretty regularly.
Well, what's that mean? Like a couple times a week?
Yeah, like 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay.
You know, my wife and I have always been kind of red wine drinkers at home. And then if I go out and meet guys out for drinks, I'll have a beer.
Now,
Because
do you
you're in
find
Bend,
that?
so-
Yeah, no, like today, it's like there's always happy hour at OR. I'm
Yeah,
going to drink a
right.
beer today.
Do you
for
find
sure.
that beer sets that inflammation off again for you more than red wine?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And you know, I think I think Dr. Volek has seen some clients, drink a couple of glasses that are really good and fat adapted. Have seen them stay in ketosis even after drinking a couple of glasses of red wine every night.
Okay.
Endurance athletes. So, I don't sweat it. I mean, I like red wine, so
Right.
I'll drink red wine, and then if I have a choice to somewhere, if there's wine and good wine and
Right.
beer, I'll pick wine.
Right.
I try to make good choices when I can, but I do like a good pale ale, and or in a good English ale, especially if it's on nitro.
Okay.
Well, you got some watering holes in Bend.
Oh
too.
man, there's a
Yeah.
lot of breweries,
Yeah.
dude, and
that's-
good breweries
That's
too.
what I was gonna say. Some
So
of my,
I do. I
fresh
like to
squeezed
go enjoy
IPA.
one. I just don't ever drink it back. I try not to drink them back-to-back days too often. I will at OR. I drank one yesterday, and
Yeah.
I drank a
have
couple
to.
yesterday,
Okay, how
It's
many?
part of the industry.
and I'll drink a couple today.
Yeah.
I am on recovery mode.
Yeah, it's true.
There you go.
So
You got
speaking of recovery mode, halfway through the year, you got anything else coming up this year?
Run Rabbit Run 100.
Ooh.
Yes.
Have you done that before?
Yeah, this will be my 3rd time there.
What do you think about that course? You like that course?
I like it. It's I mean, it's not the. I think it's more the whole vibe of the race
Okay.
that I like more than the course.
Right.
There's sections of the course I really like,
Yeah.
and there's a couple sections that are okay.
You're just like, okay, let's hurry up and get this
Yeah,
over with.
but
get
also
to
has
the
a really
stuff.
good cash purse. So,
True,
Yeah, there you
it
go.
and I've been
does.
in the money twice, so
Yeah.
I'm going back for some
I
money
hear ya.
hopefully too.
So this year, who's running it this year? Who you?
I haven't looked at the ultra sign up.
You haven't done your
But-
stalking yet?
I haven't done any stalking yet. I just got in with Hardrock, man. Like,
Last thing you want
there's-
to do is look
I
at
don't
some
wanna
stats and
think
races.
of how to race right now. But I know Sage is coming.
He is?
Josh Arthur, who's
Yeah.
been second there. And he ran really well against Rob Carrar in 2014 when I was there. I got 3rd.
Right.
Josh got 2nd, and Rob won. There's a couple other younger guys that are like haven't done a lot of hundreds, but are
Right.
maybe they're new to hundreds. I can't remember.
Just that youth is just right?
Yeah, and there's kind of dark
Crazy.
horses. You never
Yeah.
know. They could nail it.
Yeah.
They could have a breakout race.
But they can
So-
blow up spectacularly.
Exactly. And that race is a little long. It's not. It's
is,
a little
right?
over 100 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's cool, and there's a lot of night running in that race because it starts. It's got the tortoise and hare division.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So it's the hares start at noon. So we all have to race through the night.
right.
It gets dark on us like before 50,
Yep.
and so experience helps a little there.
Yeah.
And it's good. I like it because my family likes to go. Steamboat's a cool town.
Steamboat
it is
is.
cool.
It's a really fun town to take
Yep.
your family to. They get to take over the whole Steamboat Village
Right.
during the race because it's the slowest weekend of the year.
Yep.
So it's all runners and families, and it's a cool place to hang out.
Right.
And the families, it's really spectator and crew friendly.
Right.
Like, no, there's not like massive driving or weird. Like, it's all super easy to get to all the aid stations.
Right.
And it's easy for my family to see me several times during the race and really not have to do much but drive like 3 miles.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Not
awesome.
some crappy maybe 4-wheel drive road
Yeah,
or something
exactly.
like that.
You don't even have to do that.
Yeah, it's just like I'm there.
I mean, I don't make my wife crew. I never have made her. I
That's
made her.
a smart man.
She crewed for me in the first Western States, and that was the last time.
Yeah. No wonder you have such a long
Well,
marriage.
we had kids. We had kids. She was pregnant with my son at Western States 2002, like 3 weeks from giving birth.
Oh, my goodness.
So after that, we had a baby.
Yeah.
And so
Somebody had to take care
I
of
went
the
on
baby.
drop bags and no crew for years
Right.
until I finally, 5 or 6 years ago, started getting one crew guy to come and help me through aid stations.
Yeah,
As
that's smart.
this speed has escalated in ultras.
That's awesome though, because we have friends and we're all into this. We're fans of the sport. We do the sport, but people are saying, I want to know how he went from this to where he is now, because it's not like you just popped on the scene like some people do and just are tearing it up. I mean, you've
had longevity.
Yeah, like you said earlier, like 50%, maybe mid-pack to top 30%, right? So you figured some things out and you got there. And that's
but people don't. I think that sometimes people don't realize that I've been doing this 16 years.
Yeah.
2500s and have won 14 of those.
Yeah.
Right.
So like a pretty good winning percentage too. I mean,
Yeah.
pretty okay at hundreds, I think.
Yeah.
I kind of figured them out. They're always like weird. They're always like
something.
it's always like throwing caution to the wind. Sometimes you don't know how they're going to pan out. It's 100 miles, it's a long way, and a lot can go wrong. So.
Well, it's interesting because you do well at 100 miles, like you were saying. But you see a lot of people that are 50-mile, 50K, and past that, it's the 60-mile mark, 70-mile mark. They fall apart, guts, different things like that. So it's different to see a guy that is solid at the 100-mile, like you said, but maybe not at a 50K because of leg speed or speed.
Yeah. I mean, at 45, you don't have awesome leg speed. Yeah. I mean, I have okay. If you keep using it, you don't necessarily lose it. But I never had like awesome leg speed, because I didn't use it in my 20s. Like, I had good leg speed in high school. I ran okay. I ran like a, PR, like 202 in the 800 meter. But never like, didn't really, after that was just casual running through college and got into mountain biking. So I didn't continue to do any kind of speed work. And so you lose that little bit of like really top end, I think, if you wait. Because I didn't start doing speed work until I was in my 30s.
Wow.
Again, from like 18 to, I took a big 14, 15-year break of not doing any speed work. Whereas if you keep doing it, you're not going to lose that much speed.
No. Yeah.
So I just don't have that top end, You give me an 100K or 100 miler and it's long enough that I can, work my way through the field. But.
So where does the name Bronco Billy come from?
A good buddy of mine, Jason Moyer in Bend, a solid ultra runner in his own right. Doesn't travel a lot and race, but really good, like kind of regional runner. Was kind of the ultra runner in Bend when I first got into it, and he and I trained together a lot in 03. I paced him at Wasatch, and that whole season we did a ton of training runs together. And he's of Norse descent and looks very Viking.
Nice.
And I used to call him Berserker. and I grew up on a farm, kind of country boy, and I used to yell yeehaw a lot when we were in the woods, and he started calling me Bronco Billy, and so we like joked and called each other those kind of names all that whole season. And then in 04, early 04, I was looking for a way to share my race experiences with my family in the Midwest. So I started a blog, these things called blogs.
Yeah, right.
And I was looking for a domain name, and Bronco Billy wasn't available, and Jeff Browning wasn't available, and then Bronco Billy wasn't available, and so I found Go Bronco Billy, and as a marketing person and graphic designer, I was like, I need an action word, and so that kind of I used that and started doing blog just for my family, and then blogs kind of took off, and then social media came around, and I was like, well, I should get Go Bronco Billy, and so I grabbed Twitter and grabbed Instagram, and so all those became, and then a bunch of friends. I had a bunch of friends that, started calling me, running friends, calling me Bronco all the time, and they started yelling it at races, and so people start picking up on that, and as social media, everybody started calling me Bronco Billy, and it stuck. And now it's taken on a life of its own, and
that's how it works.
That's how it works.
Well, and you have
When's the bobblehead coming out?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I know, right? I need a bobblehead.
Dashboard bobblehead.
Yeah.
Because you have a certain look to you, right? I mean, you got the runners with the longer hair or the big bushy beards, but you've got most of the time the Patagonia hat flipped up. You got your glasses on, so you have the look too,
I ran
right?
with Rob Carr and Max King this morning for a GU run, and I had my hat all flared up, and I said, and they were talking about, someone made a comment because Rob and I had the same GU hat on, but he had his normal and I had mine all flipped up. And I said, actually, I wear prescription glasses and I use it as a wind flare. Like it forces wind down over your glasses to keep them from fogging when you're really sweaty
Right.
and humid. And so I've always done that. That you always see me with my hat up, and that's why it makes my glasses not fog because I have prescription lenses, and so it just kind of happens that way. So I'm always like pushing my bill up unless the sun's in my face. So it's not really for hipster look. It's really for like it actually has a function.
Well, too late because I have one of those, the little duckbill hats.
Oh,
they're
Me
awesome.
and Joe-
Yeah,
and I
truckers.
always flip mine up.
Yeah.
And part of the reason is like, what? Isn't that how you're supposed to wear them? That's all I see pictures of. That's how you wear them, right?
Well, that Patagonia trucker hat, it comes pretty much with that
Flat.
thing.
With the flip up.
Yeah,
It
the
pretty
auto
much
flip.
comes that way now.
Well, and
Yeah.
also I liked. Well, like
Are
on
you
cl-
getting a percentage of that? Because you should.
I
Right?
should what?
You should get a percentage of every single one of those things that's
Yeah,
sold.
it's
I'm the one that
trademarked.
actually like made them bring that hat back because they used to make that
Oh, yeah.
duckbill
the,
hat.
The trucker
yeah.
or the duckbill?
The
The duckbill
Yeah.
was made
That cool.
back in the late 90s, early
Yeah.
2000s.
I
and one
remember
of the
that.
first running hats I ever got.
Yep.
I forked out for. And when I first got into ultra running, and so I ran Western States in that
Yeah.
in one of those hats. I still have the hat. It's got all kind of holes in it now, and it's well worn. And I kept bringing it to design off sites with Patagonia, and I like put it down. I'm like, you need to make this hat again because
Right.
every time I go to a race, people like at least 3 people say, "Oh, I loved that hat.
Yep.
Yep.
Why'd they get rid of it?" And it was the best running hat. You could just stuff it in your pocket,
Yep.
and so we probably took 5 years. They finally.
And they sell them because I've gone on there and they've been sold out.
Sold out.
Yeah.
Right? And
They're-
you go-
they've been a hot seller.
They have, and I've got a couple. A couple
got a
different
couple, too.
colorways. They're super nice, especially because we're here in Utah and it gets hot.
Yeah.
Drop them in the creek, throw them on.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not like heavy saturated, but it cools your
With the
nice.
giant holes in it. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
awesome hats.
Yeah, so you got the cool look, you got the cool name, social media
Well,
stuff.
no, I should throw. They're out there. This will make you feel a little old.
Uh-oh, I don't
Um,
need that.
Rod
we don't
Bean
need
is a
that.
good buddy of mine, and Ben.
Yeah, we know
he
Rod.
he helps coach cross country track at his son's middle school, and they were saying, "Oh, aren't you an ultra runner? In town or whatever?" They're talking to him about ultra running or whatever, and they said, "There's another guy that's around here. He looks like like 90s guy."
serious?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and so
90s
I thought
guy?
it was hilarious. I'm totally like 90s guy.
That's awesome.
That's how the
That's a
kids
new
are talking
I'm like
about you.
grunge 90s guy,
Hashtag 90s guy. Heck with hashtag giddy up. It's hashtag 90s guy. Well, so you got Run Rabbit Run. Anything else? Or are you going to kind of wind it down and just
Yeah, I mean, I've been toying with the idea. I am going to do a fast pack around on the Wonderland Trail with my son.
Oh, nice.
In August. So August is going to be like training for Run Rabbit Run, but also like chilling with my son too, and then my family because I've been traveling quite a bit. This August is like downtime to hang out with family, and then I'm toying with the idea of going to maybe like Hellgate or something in December. I told Horton I would come run that race at some point, and he's been bugging me for a few years to run it, and I need to run a Horton race. I've never run one, so
oh, wow.
yeah.
That'll be cool. So,
Well, I have run Grindstone, but it's not a Horton race
Right.
anymore.
so what about next year? Are you going to do looking at the Western Hardrock thing again? You talked
I think
about
Western
or-
UTMB next year.
Okay.
Okay.
I rolled my ankle at UTMB and my only DNF. I gotta make amends with the
that-
course.
Get that
Right.
taken care
The
of.
course
I need
guy.
a shot at that. I just really want to run, get a finish there, and it's a pretty special race because it's just so big, and there's, Europe's it's cool because they're just the spectator factor there is like crazy.
Oh, I could imagine.
Like just people like kids out at 2:00 in the morning on a mountain pass, like ringing a cowbell at you.
Because that's normal for them, right?
That's normal. Like
Yeah.
they love it.
They're
There's
into
people
it.
everywhere on
Yeah.
that course. Like you'll be in the middle. Feel like you're in the middle of nowhere on a giant pass, kind of foggy, and you're like,
Right.
"Whoa, there's
There's
like-
a throng of people up here.
yeah."
yeah, we had
Into it.
We had Brian Beckstead on
Yeah.
the show, and he mentioned that. He's like, it's so cool because like 3 a.m, they're, and I can't remember the words he was saying. They were yelling when they're
Alley,
ringing.
alley.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it is. He's like, alley, alley, and they're ringing bells on the mountain. He's
Yeah,
like,
they're
"There's
yelling
really-
in your face.
Yeah, he's
I mean,
like-
you see the Tour de France, and people like
Running
when they're on mountain
alongside.
climbs, and when
Right.
people are running next to you and like right in their face, they do that kind of stuff. It's like they're yelling at you, and kids are running next to you. And it's
That's
really
awesome.
cool.
Well, I know
That's
just
cool.
just watching it overseas. I mean, we haven't been there, but just seeing it's just a whole different ball game altogether.
Yeah,
you
the
know?
mountain culture there is just, they all get out. Everyone gets out. You see 80-year-old women hiking up some steep, like gnarly trail.
They'd be passing me. Like, hey, what's
yeah.
up?
Yeah, they're just everyone gets out, but they also have refugios everywhere, and
True.
So you can like hike 2 hours uphill
And
and
stop
then
and get some wine and cheese.
and get wine and cheese or a cappuccino. It's pretty sweet.
All three. That sounds good.
It's like it's incentive to get a little farther up in the mountains.
Yeah.
So, well,
I'm good.
I appreciate you coming on the show. Like I said, I know you're busy. We've been looking forward to this show for multiple reasons. Obviously,
Yeah.
to meet you in person. I mean, I've exchanged emails with you, but what you did this year,
pretty
Hardrock
cool.
Western, that's
Thanks for having me
awesome.
on, guys.
Yeah,
That's
that's
fun.
awesome. And then this Fat Adaptive is.
Yeah, it's
is,
good to have those personal stories.
Yeah, because like you said, do the research. When you got someone that's done the research, has the, the experience and the results of it. I mean, hey, there's something that speaks there. So it's something people should look into.
Yeah.
And we always talk about healthy lifestyles anyway.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, thanks for taking the time with us. Good luck at Run Rabbit Run.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Enjoy the time in the Wonderland Trail with your kid.
Yeah, giddy up.
Yeah, there we go. Hashtag 90s guy.
Yeah, that's right.
Hashtag nice, guys.
All right, well, go have a beer here at OR, and thanks again for joining us.
All right, cheers.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to the Trail Manners Podcast. We'd like to thank the one and only 90s guy, Jeff Browning, for joining us today. What awesome information. What great stuff. Congratulations, Jeff, on a fantastic season. We also want to encourage everybody to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Trail Manners, or swing by the website at trailmanners.com. Stop by the store page for some gear. Hit us up on the contact page. Let us know what you want to see, who you want to hear, or even if you'd like to be on our show. So until next time, this is Eric Manning with Joel Hatch reminding you, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for. Now go get it.